From what I understand, everybody had like their own special like pass. This was your dad's. What can you tell me about this? You've seen it before, right? Can you tell the audience about it?
What's interesting about this particular one, because we all had, and if I thought about it, I would have brought with me, I have a yellow Elvis button. Very simple, very plain, but that was what got me backstage as opposed to this much more sophisticated looking gold card. I remember one time as I was selling, one of the guys said, "Forget about your souvenirs. I want that button for access backstage." And it's very simple. It's a very plain yellow button, about this big, but nobody was thinking more sophisticated than that. I get a kick out of this because this makes it official, and it's something that the Colonel would have conceived of, because the Colonel was a showman. But what's interesting is they have my father's name misspelled.
Is it misspelled?
My father's name is misspelled.
Is it?
The name Dvorin has one I in it at the end, O-R-I-N, and people are not used to spelling a name that has a D and a V next to it, like the composer Dvorak. DV is something I always have to explain. Is that D apostrophe V?
Right.
D-E-V?
You think it's an apostrophe usually, or the V is a capital V.
Yeah. But so this was given to any of the mainstays of the Elvis show as MC announcer, which he became. I think he's most known for that. People wouldn't necessarily know that he was the merchandise head, but they certainly know him as the person, the voice, from the concert shows. But I get a kick out of the fact that his name is misspelled.
Let me see that.
Yes, sir. D-I-V.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yeah.
It's D-I-V-O-R-I-N. Wow. Right. I always referred to it as the elitist card because Sonny West had one.
Yep.
Ed Banja, he had one as well. So I imagine all of the main members, as it says, members of the show, got this. They had to engrave the name in the top and engrave what their position was. Anyway, I thought I'd show that to you, and I wanted everybody else to see that too. So when was this card used? I mean, did he have to show it, or was it was just an honorary?
This is more a show thing. This came out '74, actually my tour.
Oh, really?
The Colonel was very proud of this. It's something they thought was. I don't know if the Colonel ever thought thing is cool. As a 17-year-old, the word cool, but it was something that gave a certain kind of dignity and a certain statesmanship to any of the main people.
Yeah.
So it would have been Ed Banja, if you know the name George Parkhill, Pat Kelleher, Jerry Weintraub, any of the mainstays would have received this, and it was a big deal at the time, only because the Colonel thought it was something that gave a certain dignity and respect. But the way we got backstage was that yellow button I was telling you about. And this one may be extra valuable now with the misspelling. That may make it more of a collector's item.
I didn't even know it was misspelled. Yeah. That's cool.
Collector's item.
Also, too, there was a, this goes back a little bit to the Memphis show in '61. There was a certificate that your dad had got from Elvis and the Colonel to the people who worked on the show in Memphis. And Elvis signed it. Do you remember anything about that?
Colonel appreciated everyone working as hard as he did, or at least doing their best. And Elvis, when it comes down to it, was a good Southern boy with Southern manners who had appreciation, said yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Woman walks in the room, stands up. Had those Southern kind of manners and never got away from that, even as big as he was.
Right.
And the fact is, I'm not surprised. They always showed great appreciation, both Elvis and the Colonel, always.
You actually met Elvis and talked with him, but there were some circumstances around it, and there was an aftermath.
I'm working as a seller, thanks to Sonny West, because otherwise I would have been just in the souvenir room giving out the merchandise, doling it out to the other sellers. Sonny West had told me in that very first city, Fort Worth, you got to sell. You're going to make a lot of money. So I did sell and did very well. The merchandise went fast. And I was good at it. I didn't know I'd be good at it. Pictures, posters, buttons, albums, and scarves. Take home a little bit of Elvis right here. And you didn't have to work that hard. The people were interested. One of the cities, I think it was Louisville. At this time, I don't remember all these years later. I think it was Louisville. I found myself backstage at the in-between. Elvis is not there. He's not even in the building the first half of the show. The show opens up with the Sweet Inspirations, opens up with Jackie Kahane. At that time, there was a group called Voice that Elvis himself had signed down. They opened the show. Then Jackie Kahane and the Sweet Inspirations. Then it's intermission time, my dad. And Elvis is first coming to the stadium at that time. He's not even around. People don't know that. And Elvis is the entire second half, of course. And there is a prolonged intermission by which to, A, get Elvis in the building. Sometimes he was late. We would see that industry door open in the back. You see it, oh, finally, he's here. I found myself in the back. Elvis was already there. And there I am, almost as close as we are right now. And there's Elvis. And I can't believe it. I am 10 feet away from Elvis Presley. And I'm a 17-year-old kid. Should be selling, but I'm doing this. Elvis looks really nervous to me. He's wearing his jumpsuit, still wearing the glasses. He takes them off last thing right before he goes on stage. And he's got all the diamond-crusted jewelry, on his fingers. And I'm thinking, you're ruining those things as he's almost like crushing them into the bricks of this room backstage before it goes on. And he looks very nervous. And one of his guys is massaging his back. Don't worry, E. They don't call him Elvis. Call him E.
Right.
Don't worry, E. Don't worry. And he's getting a massage. And he's turned towards this brick wall. I'm 10 feet away. That day, I was selling posters. And I don't know what made me do this. I don't know, instinct. Elvis! I just start talking. Elvis, you want to buy an Elvis poster? He turns around, sees me. I don't know if he knows who I am. And he looks at me. No, I don't like them. And I think that's hilarious. Elvis says to me, I don't like them. I think I've got the story of the universe. I thought Elvis doesn't like Elvis posters. Okay. Goes on stage, takes off the glasses. I just talked to Elvis Presley. I'm there to sell. Next day, it's for sure 2 nights, so I can look on my list of cities. Same thing, I'm backstage, because now I want to do this again. I'm selling buttons the second night, because as we're there, I get the nerve again. Hey, Elvis, you want to buy an Elvis button? Turns to me, looks at me again, a pause. No, I don't like them either, And I think this is hilarious. And he says, on second thought, let me have one of them. Now, he doesn't come over to get it, and I'm not allowed to get, that close. Yeah. One of the guys comes and grabs a button.
Yeah.
I see later on he threw the button out to the crowd.
Oh.
Now, my PS to the story is when I went to check in my merchandise, if you take out $100 worth of merchandise, when you're checking in, you either return the merchandise or the money. It has to equal the amount you took out. That's simple enough. If you return $50 of merchandise, you have $50 cash, you get your commission. It's very simple. I was $1 short. I was never short, and I can't think. How could I be $1 short? I don't get. Oh! And my father had heard. He said, "James, don't forget, you get credit for the $1, the button." And he tells the guy I'm checking in with, give him a $1 credit. He gave Elvis a button. The guy, what? Huh? Because this guy doesn't know. All right, that's the end of my story. So I think to myself, this is hilarious. I've got the greatest story ever to tell my friends and people. I was there and tried to solve it. No, I don't like them. I don't like them either. I find out years later. I thought that was the end of the story. My father tells me, because he and Tommy Diskin, of course, are always friends. James, Tommy didn't like the fact you were talking to Elvis. I said, really? I didn't know that. Nothing was said to me at the time. Yeah, he says, you were making Elvis nervous. I think this is the best topper to the story. This 17-year-old is smart aleck. Yeah, I'm making Elvis nervous.
You're the one making him nervous, not the concert.
Yeah, 20,000 people out there. Right. Because I'm talking. I didn't know that at the time. It was years later when Tommy was told, my father, keep your son, keep Jamie away from Elvis. He's making Elvis nervous. I didn't know that. I thought I had the greatest story just trying to sell the poster and the button. No, I don't like them.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So it was, do you think when he took the button, was he like having fun with you?
I'm sure.
I mean, even when he said he didn't like the posters, he was just joking, right?
Exactly.
I don't like that poster.
Exactly. There's an absurdity. Elvis doesn't like Elvis posters.
Right,
he doesn't like the button. On second thought, let me have one of them.
I mean, he wasn't mad at you.
No, he's teasing with me.
He was,
He sees this 17-year-old.
Because you're like a kid, right?
Exactly.
And he's not,
And that was Elvis. Elvis was easygoing, good guy. I mean, look, he had his moments like all of us. But Elvis was a good guy, and there's a lot of bad press out there, and I'm sorry, he doesn't deserve it. Elvis had Southern manners, he's a good person, good man, and he's having fun. He's having fun. No, I mean, think about it. Elvis doesn't like Elvis posters. There's an absurdity to that.
I think I mentioned this, too, before. Like, Carol and I, we were so honored to be able to meet with Sonny West and Joe Esposito. who I think Joe and I kind of had a connection because we were both from Chicago.
Yes, sir.
Same as Al and I, all being from Chicago. But Joe was really, really nice. I got along with Joe really well. I got along with Sonny especially. And if you remember, Carol, how Sonny always forgot your name. That was so funny. He would come to the show and he'd go, "Oh, tell Cheryl I said hi." No, it's Carol, Sonny. Oh, okay. And then wouldn't he call you Cheryl? And as a joke, right?
Yeah, he did.
But yeah, he was great, and of course DJ was great too. I almost want to say that they weren't just business associates. They were kind of like friends because we sometimes we had lunch together, or we would sit out in the lobby and talk and have a beer, or we would go to the swimming pool over at Days Inn, remember? And DJ would be there, sitting out there with Sonny, and we were sitting around just shooting the shit for hours and laughing and drinking. So you could tell even their comments about Elvis. They said that he was just a very pleasant guy. He was fun to be with and everything. But he had his insecurities.
As we all do.
And maybe more so because of the tremendous amount of pressure. Because even in an interview, Elvis said, there's the man and then there's the myth. He said it's hard to live up to both of them. You're one thing, but then you got to live up to this other thing.
I didn't have much to do with Joe Esposito because Joe was always involved with Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
He was, during the tour, he's with Elvis. He was the brains there. He was the guy that you go to because he's sharp, he's quick, and he's efficient. Mm-hmm. You give Joe something to do, it's going to be done and done right. But I did spend time with Sonny, spend time with Red. These are good guys. Personality-wise, easygoing. I may have mentioned to you on the phone, I think, how during some of the concerts, Red was trying to steal posters off my table.
What was that all about?
My table is always off. If you're looking at the stage, my table's off to the right. So I am right underneath the J.D. Sumner and the Stamps Quartet. I have, forgive me, I have their derrieres in my face, where they're singing.
Oh, wait. Now I got to stop you.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that there was a souvenir stand?
Yes.
Up by the stage?
Well, we don't sell during the show.
Oh,
we would move it. So during the intermission and in the beginning and then at the blow-off.
Oh, so you move it in and then move it out.
Move it out. So I move it, and I'm right below J.D. Sumner, the Stamps Quartet, in every city.
Okay.
And just watching my stuff, of course, watching Elvis, there I am. Well, Red, I don't know what fetish he had or obsession he had with the posters. Let me have, no, I'll be short. I can't give you one, and I always had them rolled up. He would figure I'm watching over here. He would take one of the unrolled one, and I see him. I'm watching J.D. Sumner and I see him slowly trying to pull one. Red, it's going to cost me. And he's just laughing. Never said he just laughing because
so he might have just been doing that
teasing
to
with
mess
me.
With you.
Yeah, but anyway, so Red's trying to steal posters off my table. These are good guys.
On the tour, from the moment you flew to the first location to the end, as fans, we've all heard, and the movies we saw Elvis on tour, that movie in particular shows a lot.
Yeah.
Was it really that insane and grueling, or was there any time to relax, or how was it?
You just described it. You have it exactly right. Always on the move, always busy. I can remember one time, one day, one afternoon, it was unusual, where Elvis had played the night before, no matinee in the same city, and then playing the next night. I'd have to look up which city it was. Mm-hmm. It was unusual for us to have any kind of downtime, because otherwise he filled almost every day with a matinee, not all of them, and of course every evening there were no open nights. And we would be always on the move. So you hit the city. If you're there in time to try to get some sleep, it's 2 a.m, because as I said, we were the second last people out of every stadium. The only people were the sound people there even longer. We would go to our hotel. Thankfully, I told you how precise they were. Our stuff is in our room. Get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Have to be up and be at the stadium. So we've got our car, go to the place, start right away. We start counting out the merchandise, doling it out, making sure it's organized, the different places, the different areas within every stadium, knowing the stadium. Now there's the concert, and I'm kind of doling over that quickly, and you've got the before, the middle, and the end. I say, the before the show, you've got the intermission, and then the blow-off is the very end, and you're selling the whole time. Everything sells in active. Now when you're done, break it all down. Same thing. Make sure you have all the merchandise. Be careful with the money. Some interesting stories having to do with the money. It's all cash. It's all cash.
So I take it that's a yes.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. It was a long yes. Grueling is the word. And we're always on the move.
Was there a particular show that was considered your favorite? And if so, what city? And why?
I could not pinpoint a city because Elvis did almost the same. I can give you some of the interchangeable songs. If he did You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, he didn't do Bridge Over Troubled Waters. He would do one or the other.
Yeah, I noticed that in some of the concerts, recorded concerts, yeah.
But I will tell you, rather than give you an answer as to a given city, I will tell you the style. When Elvis would do Bridge Over Troubled Waters, he brought the place down. You couldn't imagine the sound, the thunder of 24,000 people. It was unbelievable. Elvis doing a song, and you know you're Elvis. Mm-hmm. There was nothing like it. It was dramatic. It was out of this world. When he did that, he did the Olivia Newton-John song.
Two of them.
But at the time, he wasn't doing If You Love Me, Let Me Know.
Right,
that came later on.
Because it wasn't a hit yet.
Right, that's right. He said, Let Me Be There.
Right.
When he did Let Me Be There, the place was up for grabs.
Yeah, I remember.
So it's not even so much the where. When he would do this, you're on fire. Mm-hmm. You cannot believe that any one entertainer, and I know there's Michael Jackson since, Frank Sinatra before, but I have to believe when Elvis Presley was at his best, there was nobody like him.
So you're saying it's hard to pick out a particular show.
It would be
nothing in your memory that you can remember, anyone in particular that was better than the other, or just they were all pretty good.
In 74, he looked great. He lost weight before the 74 tour. Mm-hmm. Elvis lost about 20 pounds. His voice was as strong as ever. He looked terrific. So I would have to say the tour itself, there was no weakness. Okay. Later on, we know in 75, 76, there was some weakness there. Right. Not in 74.
Yeah, from what I remember, the recordings, all the live stuff, I think he was really good from 69, obviously. I think 69, he was like at the top of his game because he cared about every song, every performance. Yes. And then you could tell as the years went by, it became routine. Not that he didn't do a great job. I mean, when he loved this song, like Let Me Be There and some of those other ones,
threw himself into it.
That's probably why RCA released Let Me Be There as a single off of the Live in Memphis show. How Great Thou Art. The live recording was nominated for a Grammy Award.
The tour of 74, he was still caring. He was terrific. He was with it. It was the voice, the sound, the performance was just stupendous. And that's why it's hard for me to say any one city because he was top-notch throughout that tour. Really cared and sounded and looked great.
Of course, there were a couple shows where he went on tirades in Vegas. There's one famous show where he got really mad at somebody one of the employees of the Hilton had said something about he was on drugs, and he went off on stage. I had the recording.
Oh my!
Someone said he was sick, right? Well, he was strung out on drugs. Yeah, and I have it's a bootleg recording. He's swearing and. He seemed like he was really tired. I don't know how much of the drug situation played a part. The drugs can take a toll. I loved the movie. The reason why is because I'm a filmmaker. I understand that Baz Luhrmann, the director, had one hell of a job. How do you tell a story about a man's career of 3 decades in only 2.5 hours or 3 hours? How do you do that? Well, he did it. Whether he was accurate or not is another story. But he made it entertaining. Every good story has to have a hero and a villain. The hero was Elvis, the villain was the Colonel.
Which is unfortunate.
But still, as a movie, it worked. Try to imagine the person who doesn't know Elvis or the Colonel like you did. Try to imagine a young kid just growing up and heard Elvis was this idiot or the fat guy that died on the toilet, right? They go and see a movie like Baz Luhrmann's film, and all of a sudden it's like, wow, this guy was actually pretty cool. Even though the Colonel was portrayed the way he was, even though the facts were off,
completely,
they still, at least, he did nail some things, though. There were some things that I had read about Elvis that Baz Luhrmann got right. especially what you had just said earlier about his connection with his mom and dad in the very beginning. And the Colonel kind of had to talk to the mom and dad and talk them into things. That's in the movie. I have my opinion about the movie that way. But then as an Elvis fan, I understand. When Elvis is in Jacksonville, Florida, where he gets arrested, when he does that finger thing and then he sings Trouble, and I told Carol, I says, Trouble hasn't even been recorded yet.
That is correct. Some of the
he did King Creole after the Jacksonville, Florida.
That's right.
But it made for a great moment when he's looking for trouble, and the girls go nuts. It was actually a very clever choice on the director's part. Yeah. Were you in any of the shows in Vegas?
So it's not the shows in Vegas. The closest I came to that was at the end of our tour in '74. Mm-hmm. They always ended up every tour in Las Vegas where they would finish up the books. They take care of all the numbers and the money issues, and they would then resupply the merchandise. My brother is in a picture with Elvis of my mother, my father, Elvis, my dad. My brother's wearing my jacket. It's a yellow velour jacket. I told him, don't button the jacket. It's too tight. But anyway, it's my jacket. But I was not at any of the Elvis shows in the International or at the Hilton. My brother was.
You know, when you first told me about that, the first thing that came to mind was in the movie, That's the Way It Is. There's a scene where Joe Esposito walks into a room and it's filled with Elvis souvenirs and all kinds of stuff on the ceiling, on the walls. He's like, there's photos and tour books. Is that the room you're talking about? Is that where the stuff was kept?
Because the Colonel had an entire floor at the Hilton, you had your storage places. Mm-hmm. I saw them, and because you're unloading this, and I'm not personally, although I did drive a truck. I think I mentioned to you.
Right.
There was a Ryder truck of supplies, and I was told before the tour, when the Colonel tells you something, you say, "Yes, sir, Colonel," and you do it. Okay. At 17 years old, I'm doing what I'm told. Now, I don't know how to drive a truck. I've never driven a truck in my life. Yeah. And the Colonel said, "Mr. Jamie, you get in there." And I had one of the Banja boys with me, and it was Mike. And I said, "Mike, I've never driven a truck before." and I was thinking we'll switch or something. The Colonel said, anyway, "Yes, sir, Colonel." I got into the cab of the Ryder truck and I drove it around.
Did you even have a license?
A regular license, not for a truck, but
right.
Colonel says do it. I said, "Yes, sir, Colonel."
What are some of your favorite memories from that tour in particular? Whether it be moments with people or moments. You mentioned plenty of moments, but from that time frame, from that tour, was that tour in the what time of year was that tour?
Summer.
Okay, so it was a summer tour of '74.
This was the second or third week in June, went through the first week in July. It was 3.5 weeks, no days off.
Okay.
Elvis performed every evening, and I'd say half of the days with a matinee.
Okay, so what were some of your favorite memories from the tour itself, from that specific time period?
So a couple things having to do with Elvis. First of all, it didn't matter if it was the first day of Fort Worth or at the very end, where we were in Salt Lake City. It's amazing to me. Elvis Presley, you can see him 1,000 times, and the 1,000th time, the opening with the 2001 theme, the sensation of suspense and the excitement that was generated as the lights are down. I hadn't understood much before why Elvis Presley doesn't get an introduction. My father said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis Presley." He didn't do that. Elvis Presley doesn't need an introduction.
You're right.
So with the lights down, you built that suspense. The place was up for grabs every single time. And I have to tell you, I saw every show. I saw every single show. And it didn't matter if it was the first, the middle, or the end. My heart is pumping a little faster as he comes on stage. And you think that lightning has worked its way inside the stadium. Because I think people are afraid after 10 minutes they're not going to see him again, because you have to get him right at the beginning. He comes on stage, and it looks like the place has been hit with constant lightning, those flashballs.
There was this excitement that came from the people, almost like an electricity.
Yes. My father, early on, because he had led the band in the early days, described it as follows. And they were very successful at this, with the suspense and the excitement. He's coming. He's here, he's gone. And when he's gone, that's it. People didn't believe when my father said Elvis has left the building. Oh,
they thought he was backstage.
That's right. No. He's coming, he's here, he's gone. And it built to such a suspenseful kind of excitement. The way you described it, you had to be there.
It's funny you say that about thinking he's still backstage. I remember in '72 when I saw him, I thought, yeah, he's backstage. Yeah, they don't run out the door. Then I saw the movie Elvis on Tour, and
they throw him.
Out. At that point, they throw him into a car.
He has no energy left. And I saw this myself many times. Yeah. He often did not hear my father say Elvis has left the building. He's in the limo and he's out of there. At that point, he's drained. He's given everything on stage. They are almost carrying him out. They throw him into the limo to get in on both sides.
Yeah, because there are a couple scenes in the movie where he looks totally drenched,
Gave it all.
Laying there. And I mean, he's almost incoherent. I remember that one scene in Elvis on Tour where he's sweating and Joe's next to him handing him his glasses.
Right.
He's saying, so how was that thing in there? It was like he was just so tired and blown away with the energy he put out.
They have the doors open. It's facing the right way. They throw him in. They basically throw him in, get in on both sides, doors closed, gone.
Yeah.
And then there's also personal stuff, having breakfast with Kathy Westmoreland. She's a real person. The little girl does a high voice singing, you know.
Right.
And I'm sitting having breakfast, and she's a normal, nice, very pleasant, personable. You and I were just sitting having breakfast together.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah, they're just ordinary people with an extraordinary job is what it was.
That's absolutely right.
After the tour was over in '74 that you were on, did you go to any other concerts after that?
Never did another full tour. That was my first and only full tour from beginning to end. Mm-hmm. But I did individual cities. Anything that was a reasonable drive. Bloomington, Indiana, Columbus, Ohio, Cleveland, Milwaukee. Anything that was nearby that was a reasonable drive. I went and worked. Mm-hmm. I already knew the ins and outs, knew what to do. So it was partly seeing an Elvis show, but also selling. So there were individual dates in there where I was actually still working afterwards. But I never did another full tour, just the one. Did I tell you about, I don't know if this is even interesting, about the cash in Cleveland? There were about 5 or 6 of us. Once and there were no credit cards. Mm-hmm. When you're selling, it's all cash. Credit cards were not as prolific as they are now. Everything is cash. And the Colonel was so smart. Nothing is something in 50 cents, 25 cents. It's $1, $3, $5.
Right. Okay. I remember that.
And he knows what he's doing. Anyway, at the end of every show, you have a lot of cash. And it's in a bag. And there are 5 or 6 of us. And I don't know if Dick Robe was with us. Dick Robe was the only one I know who was armed and licensed to carry a gun with us. Mm. I don't know about anybody else. Didn't ask, you know. But we're going, and I believe it was Cleveland's, and the 5 or 6 of us go into a bank just for security. Hopefully nobody, I don't know, we take a chance. That's a lot of money. You're talking about 5 digits, and it's in the tens of thousands of dollars cash. Mm-hmm. We go into a bank in Cleveland, I believe it was, and they must have figured it was drug money. My father's explained we're part of the Elvis Presley tour. We want to turn this into a cashier's check. No, I'm sorry. We're not.
Well, how much money was it?
I think it was in like the 30,000s. Yeah, 30,000s.
Well, and that's not a surprise.
So, but he says we're from the. And I remember my father saying that. And again, 17. I keep my mouth shut. I'm there. Do what I'm told. But I'm taking this all in. Mm-hmm. And I remember my father saying, he didn't use bad words. You're a bank. How do you not take money? How do you not take cash? And it first occurred to me, because we would do this in every city, go to the nearest bank. It never occurred to me to that moment, we're walking out there. What if somebody knows who we are, recognizes that's cash there?
Yeah. This is actually one of the posters, and I was able to get it into a frame. Now, I don't know how many people have seen this. Am I tilting it? Am I okay?
No, you're good.
Okay. This is the #1 bootlegged poster there is. I mean, I've seen this on eBay. I've seen it on regular poster sites where they're selling it. But it's such an easy poster to reproduce. Now, I know these are real because they came from your father's inventory. Now, this poster here, the story behind it, and I think Al told me this a long time ago. I don't know how true it is. What happened was this particular show was, I believe, supposed to be a charity concert. They had no promotional stuff for it whatsoever. I was told that somebody had to run out to a printer in Las Vegas and make this thing up real fast so they could have this and those little ones, the pink one, green one, and yellow one. Yeah. Those, of course, went on tables, restaurant tables. This one went inside the Hilton, I guess. So that's what I heard. I heard that that's why it looks so cheap.
I remember hearing that they had one of their gophers run out, that we have to do this, and don't worry, just get it done, and don't worry about how classy it looks. I think you have that exactly right.
And I heard this photo is one of Ed's. That's
no doubt. Yeah. Ed Banja, and when you asked earlier about the card, I have no doubt that his, even though he did a lot of other things, it probably said staff photographer. Ed Banja was on hand, and he took 99% of any of the photos you find in the books and the pamphlets and any of the albums. That's Ed Banja work.
The thing about this is it doesn't say what year, so I can only guess by looking at the suit. But this has got to be after 72. Was this around 74 by any chance?
I want to say 72, 73. Okay. 72, 73. This is before my tour, and it was already part of the archives. So 72, 73 would be my guess, yeah.
Okay. Well, the cool thing about this is I know it's real.
Yeah.
Folks, there's plenty of them out there, but I know for sure that this one is the real McCoy. So, but I had to ask about that because I was curious, and I wanted people to see that. Since we're talking about souvenirs, anything up here you can tell me about that might be interesting? Like, I know the photo in the black was just him modeling jumpsuits in the Hilton, right?
Yeah, that's right.
At the time, and for some reason they liked that picture, and then they decided to make it into a tour photo.
My father did not choose which pictures were used for merchandise. That was something.
Now, who chose then?
That would have been Elvis and the Colonel. Maybe Tommy Diskin was involved. So my father ended up selling the things, but my father often had his own opinion about what kinds of pictures they were using. So, for example, I can tell you, on this one, my father was not crazy about it. He says, look, Elvis's eyes look like slits. It's not the best picture.
It's not.
And it's this one or one like it. He says, no. It shows Elvis almost with a double chin. And I can remember my father talking about which ones, were appropriate, which were not. And it was his opinion. And I said, Dad, you're right. That they were so quick to get things out there. I suppose they figured nobody would care. It was either this one or one like that. He says, no, you don't show Elvis with a double chin.
Yeah, this one here. Yeah.
When I first walked into your studio, I got a kick out of these two because those were part of what I called the albums. They weren't records. When I said pictures, posters, the albums, I meant photo albums. It was the smaller version of this, the buttons, the posters. And the Colonel got a kick out of having multimillionaires rolling posters. I think the Colonel liked the fact it brought them down a notch or two. So we'd have Jerry Weintraub or some of the representatives of the Hilton, or for sure from RCA. He'd have, roll them posters. He'd say, roll them posters. And I think he loved the fact he'd get them rolling because you don't sell them as posters. You sell them boom, boom, boom like this. Yeah. That's what a sale does. And anyway, it just brings back some great memories.
Yeah, this has a lot of great photos. Obviously, this has got to be 74 because that's the Aloha from Hawaii suit in there. And, of course, the Hilton is in there. And it says, now this says 72 engagement, so that must have been from the Summer Festival in 72. But a lot of great pictures. I mean, a lot of these have got to be Ed's, right?
All of them. There's no doubt in my mind what you're looking at is Ed Banja's work.
Yeah, there's some really, really great pictures in here. Yeah. And I always liked how, even though you got these great photos, the Colonel always made sure that you knew where he was going to be. So there's 73. See, so this obviously came out in 73.
Marketing genius of the Colonel. Yeah. He knew what he always... That's one of the things, and not to go back to the movie necessarily, the movie made the Colonel look like he didn't know what's going on. Colonel knew every nuance, every step, every part of every tour. The only thing he was not involved in is the song selection. Elvis, who has the talent, chose what the show looked like.
Tell me about the Colonel then. I mean, you did work with him a lot and everything, so tell me your thoughts on the Colonel.
Colonel is one of a kind. He knew merchandising. He knew entertainment. He knew news. He knew politics. We sat at dinner, and I was always told to sit quietly. You're with all these honchos, Tom Hewlett, Jerry Weintraub, the Colonel, George Parkhill, Pat Kelleher, my dad, and their assistants. So it might be 10, 12 of us sitting there. The Colonel could speak about the news of the day, the politics. At a time when there were only 3 stations, CBS, NBC, and ABC as far as networks, the Colonel must have been watching everything at once. And this is before you had TV in a television, and he knew, and he spoke with such intelligence about everything. The Colonel's every move was strategic and well thought out. The man was brilliant. I love what the Colonel said about his own relationship with Elvis. He said, when I met Elvis Presley, I had $1 million worth of talent. Now, he has $1 million. And he helped to create the thing we talked about before, that Elvis was bigger than anything. The only thing comes to mind maybe is Muhammad Ali, in terms of being bigger even than your own industry. Elvis was bigger than entertainment. Ali was bigger than boxing. And that's the Colonel had something to do with it. I may have mentioned this story to you years earlier when Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show would take off vacation time. He had different people filling in before Joan Rivers,
right,
and before he had his person to fill in. One night, Frank Sinatra was there. Frank Sinatra sitting in Johnny Carson's seat, and of all things, my mother, Al Dvorin's wife, Bernice Dvorin, in her kitchen TV, points to it. I'm a kid. Points to the TV, says, the Colonel would never allow that. I said, what are we talking about, Ma? That this is Frank Sinatra, supposed to be a superstar, bigger than life. You turn on your TV, put on NBC, and there's Frank Sinatra. No. Elvis was a happening. When he came to Vegas, you know this, next to a heavyweight fight or the Super Bowl, there was nothing bigger than Elvis coming to the Hilton.
Well, that's right.
And it was the Colonel just to be thanked for that. The Colonel made it a happening. And you wouldn't turn on the TV and see Elvis sitting there, if Sinatra. That stayed with me. That's coming from my mother.
Joe Tunzi had nothing but praise for the Colonel. And I've heard, again, I'm just a fan. I'm in the middle. I did not know the Colonel. I never met him. But I have met a lot of people that have. And they're, even the employees, or even some of the behind the scenes people, I'm not going to name any names, but the entourage and other people I've met throughout the years, not everybody was completely favorable on the Colonel, but I think most of the people who knew business knew he was a genius. Some of the people I talked to who maybe did not have as favorable view of him probably didn't understand the business part or wasn't really interested in the business part. I'll give the Colonel all the credit in the world for what he did, but I believe in Elvis's talent, and I believe that had the Colonel not come along, somebody would have saw this guy and he would have got a recording contract. He would have gone up because he was just too hot and he was going really fast and look at Jerry Lee Lewis. If it wasn't for that scandal, he would have gone much further, but he still went pretty far. Now maybe the Colonel took him to heights that another person wouldn't have, but I'm saying that Elvis would have been a star either way.
I agree with you. There's stardom and there's superstardom. Right. Elvis would have been a star with the voice, the talent, the onstage performance is just out of this world. The Colonel did something even greater. We know the names, Bobby V, you talk about Bobby Darin, you're talking about even James Darin before him. There's one after another who are singers, performers, but they never reached that stratus, that stratum of Elvis, who's bigger than anything. Elvis was huge, and that's the Colonel. He would have been a star.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
the Colonel was responsible for making him a superstar.
More than that, a couple things about the Colonel that people would never know. First of all, the pleasant, the teasing part of it. We would sit at dinner, he would point something out to me, Mr. Jamie, look over there. He's taking French fries out of my plate, okay? He's teasing. He's having a good time. Yeah. He wasn't quick enough for me not to see it, but I think, look at the man's just having a good time with this.
But he did have a gambling problem, though. I mean, that everybody agreed on that. He did have a gambling.
Movie had it wrong as far as what it was anyway. He was not playing blackjack at that point. Early on, he was talking about roulette and then later craps. As far as what the actual facts.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. You reach a certain level of success, and you need the rush of the excitement. There's no question about that. The other thing with the Colonel, the generosity. I remember this like it was yesterday. We would sit at a table, finish dinner, and by the way, at every meal you talked about the next meal. You're always talking about the next meal, and I got a kick out of that. Breakfast, you talk about lunch. Lunch, you talk about dinner. He always was very generous with the wait staff and generous with the busboys. He made sure to give and he would tell, gentlemen, you always got to be generous with them because they're doing what we don't want to do. And if it weren't for the fact that nature's been good to us, we'd be doing that. The colonel was incredibly generous, wait staff, and always with the bus staff, the bus boys, always cash. And he let us know that. That was not a small thing with him. And I appreciate that. That's something to be lost.
I was told at one point in time that Al, at some point, during the concerts or towards the end of Elvis's career, in the concerts, stopped saying Elvis has left the building, and one of the Stamps Quartet would say it instead.
That's correct.
Can you tell me about that?
My father was not originally, when they hit the road, 69, 70, was not deemed to be the announcer. He was doing merchandise. Up in either Minneapolis or St. Paul, I forgot which, one of the Twin Cities, one day, out of nowhere, near the beginning of a tour, the colonel says to my father, Al, the announcer doesn't fit. Get rid of him. You got to get rid of him. He doesn't fit with the show. I've often wondered what that meant. My father didn't know more than that, or if he did, he didn't tell us. Doesn't fit the show. I'm wondering, the number, I can guess, but who knows? It could be 5, 7, 10 different things. It would just be my surmising. I have no idea. But the exact words were, Al, get rid of him. He doesn't fit the show. And my father says, we're starting a tour. Colonel, if you get rid of the MC, who's going to be the MC? He says, I have someone in mind. Colonel, who? My father always made this very dramatic. You, Colonel, I'm no announcer. My voice, it's high, it's low. I don't know. He says, who's paying you, Mr. Dvorin? You are. Then you are the announcer. And my father went on to be the announcer.
Right.
And one of the side stories, which you may have heard from him, is he was nervous at the beginning. He made little index cards. Do you know about this? He'd write out the things. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and how he did. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I think I even saw in paperwork some times where he wrote out what he was going to say.
Right. The first nights, as he goes out there and says, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Elvis Presley Show. This is before Voice and before Jackie Kane. The lights go down. So much for this, but he had it all he confined to memory, and he was good like that. My father knew where he was going. The joke of it is he had everything there in the palm of, in his hand like this, and if the lights go down, he can't read anything. So he did that till about, through my tour, he was doing 74, 75. Somewhere in there around 75, the colonel took him off just as dramatically. That's why I mentioned that story. Took him off just as dramatically as he started. No reason given. Al, we'll get one of the Stamps to do it. You're too busy with the, in the merchandise room. I've got my guesses and thoughts, but it's, again, someone guessing. But yeah, in the last year, or maybe 2, my father was not doing the announcing.
Yeah.
No, I take it back. Well, except for he would hawk the items.
Don't forget those Elvis Super Souvenirs. All the concession tables are open during intermission time for your convenience, with the giant scarves, the buttons, the pictures, the photo albums, and those gorgeous Elvis posters.
Otherwise, he was not doing the announcing that we're all used to.
Yeah, I was told it was one of the Stamps.
One point at Enoch Bill Baze, Baize, took over just, Elvis, and used my father's term.
So it was kind of random,
right?
Whoever that night.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, I was fortunate to be able to go through a lot of the stuff that was left after he passed away, and one of the interesting things I thought was cool was this item here. I thought it was so cool because it says Summer Festival Tour. His name is on it. He put a one of those Dymo things at the bottom. It says Al Dvorin, and then every date is on the front, like all the dates of the tour. And then if you go inside, there's incredible amount of detail, phone numbers and odds and ends of things from almost every area. I mean, there's even documents that he shrunk down to put in this book so he could keep accurate track of everything under. What can you tell us about it?
So I remember my father talking about the manifest. Mm-hmm. As a kid, I don't know what a manifest. The manifest.
So is that what that would be?
Yes, sir. Yes.
The manifest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I remember very clearly in 1974, my one tour, I got a copy of the manifest, where you are, where you're going, what time you need to be in front of the hotel, what time you have your bags outside of your room. It had everything. It was the master plan for everything, every aspect of the tour. It had the name of the hotel, where you're staying, the name of the stadium, had everything you needed to know. And I've mentioned to you probably a few times here in this show that the airlines could learn very well from the Elvis Presley show. Mm-hmm. They were so precise. They were so exact. And they ran on time. When you went from one city to the next, your bags magically appeared in your room in the next city, and they never made a mistake. Mm-hmm. And it was really quite otherworldly. When you mentioned before about exciting, it's true that there's no other circumstance you can think of where you have your own plane, at least for us, the four of us on this Falcon jet, where you show up there, things are done for you, your bags magically are taken, the bags show up, you work very hard, but this is what this is all about, and this was the manifest. It told you everything you needed to know about where to be, what to do, what's expected of you, and what the schedule would look like. Exactly.
Now, that's the kind of job I would like to have had at 17. At 17, I was working at a movie theater, okay, which is probably has a lot to do with why I'm also a filmmaker. But that had to be exciting as hell. Were you always an Elvis fan, or were you like did you like Led Zeppelin or some other group, and then your dad says, you're going to go on with Elvis, and you're like, oh, do I have to go on Elvis? Did you ever have that kind of attitude? Because I don't expect you to be a gung-ho Elvis fan. I mean, if you're a kid and 17 years old, which is what I was around the time I saw him, I was a fan of Alice Cooper. I liked Alice Cooper. I liked other artists too. Rolling Stones, the Beatles.
Sure. So I became an Elvis fan around 71, 72. Got inundated with the Elvis sound and the Elvis songs, and we're a musical family. So the makeup of the songs and the different parts of it, where the backup singers come in here, Elvis comes in there, was always so interesting to me. And then it solidified me going on the tour.
Yeah, once you see them and everything.
But you have a right. Simon and Garfunkel, the Beatles, early '60s things, absolutely Olivia Newton-John. Especially later on. Mm-hmm. But 71, 72 became an Elvis fan, and then, of course, the tour that, then...
So you never thought of it like, oh, God, I got to go work with Dad on Elvis. Elvis. No. You were more like, yes.
Well, the idea is that, first of all, I have to tell you, going into it, I wasn't quite sure. When Sonny West asked me, before the tour started, because we were a day or two before the first concert started, so, Mr. Jamie, what are you going to be doing on this tour? All I told him was merchandising. I really didn't know. I have to tell you, I know I'd be told, you do what you're told, do it right away. If the colonel tells you, yes, sir, colonel, and you keep your mouth shut and only answer when somebody asks you something. Yeah. For example, the first dinner, Jerry Weintraub, who was already a promoter at that point, turns to me, because I'm not talking at all. I know to keep my mouth closed. So, Jamie, do you like Cat Stevens? At the time, I didn't particularly care for Cat Stevens.
Yeah.
So I say, short to the point, he's all right. So my father tells me later after dinner, Jim, do you know what you just did? What? He asked me about Cat Stevens. I told him, he's like, you just turned down, when we come back from this tour, Cat Stevens is playing Chicago.
Yes.
He's offering you Cat Stevens. I didn't know that.
Join us for part 3 of my 3-part interview with James Dvorin, where he'll be talking about Elvis's death and how it affected him, his father, his family, and the Colonel. He'll also be talking about what Al did the years that followed and the unexpected loss of his father.